Right. So this is our final session. So today I want to do a very quick revision, maybe about 15 to half an hour, and then do the three structured papers and maybe one or two MCQ paper on your uh, user experience design. Okay, user experience design. Right. Right. So let me quickly go through the slides, UCSC slides, very quickly. Topic one, uh, I will highlight some of the areas that, of course, you should also know these things because you should have done the past papers. But I also will highlight few areas that the examiner is more interested. Okay, right. So the topic number one, introduction. So remember, this is subject is human experience. Human uh, user interfaces or HX, user experience design, UX. Uh, so you must know the difference between HCI, human computer interaction. So it's all about humans, understanding human needs, capabilities, limitations, and then understanding computer, its capabilities, limitations, and then what is interaction and how to facilitate the best possible interaction. So that is all about this subject is. Or in other words, design systems for best possible human experience, right? User experience, okay? Right. So a bit of history they have mentioned, uh, how it evolved from command line era to sophisticated UI, graphical user interfaces, and now even with touch interfaces, voice commands, sensor-based interfaces, and so on, right? Into even gesture-based interfaces. Right. So what is HCI? Design, evaluate, implementation of interactive computing systems for humans to use, right? So the idea is make it usable or user friendly and let them do their tasks efficiently. And remember, it's an interdisciplinary subject. Like technical things are there, cognitive things, engineering things, psychological, sociological, of course, designing aspects, right? And this is not only for the computing, human computer interaction is everywhere. Even designing a vehicle, anything that humans use, there's a HCI, human computer interaction. So then there's user experience design. Right. So the examiner has asked this question, right? If you have gone through the past papers, you know the three paradigms. Actually, very unfortunately, the examiner has just mentioned them as first paradigm, second paradigm, and third paradigm. So without mentioning what is it, right? So that is the extent the examiner has expected. So ask you to identify which of the scenarios related to which paradigm. First of all, you must know the paradigm, therefore. It's a second paper question. Paradigm one is human factors, that is how the limitations and capabilities of humans, and also how human factors as an individual affect your design, right? So the paradigm two is cognitivism, that is more related to how humans understand, learn things, and how humans process data. So it's a little bit more detailed or high level concept. So the third paradigm, phenomenological situations, that is how things are interacted, sociological aspects, and that kind of things. Okay. So just go through this because there's a full question, second paper, right? So paradigm one, man-machine coupling. What are the goals? What are the aspects related to paradigm one that is more user-centric? paradigm, some questions related to paradigm one, then paradigm two is more cognitive. If you see some cognitive related aspects, so that related to paradigm two. Okay. So that bridging the gap between machine and the human. So some questions paradigm two try to solve, ask, and then the paradigm three. So it's more holistic thing, how people complex interact in a complex manner, right? And also as a society, as a more bigger picture, how things are interacting. Okay. So aspect, role level, cognitive aspect, more holistic approach, including sociological things. Okay. Right. So then, of course, the evolution, right? So what is usability? What is user interface? What is user experience? What is user experience design? So UXD is the bigger thing. It's consider all the aspects from requirement analysis to evaluation, but use that is UXD. Use interface design. UID is just concentrating on design in the interfaces. So UID is subpart of UXD. Okay. UID is subpart of UXD. Okay. So UI and UX. UI is more narrow focus. UXD is more broad focus. And your subject is UX, not UI. Okay. So UI is just the tip of the ice. Below there's UX. So the expectation of UX engineers, right? Critical thinker, analytical mindset, good communicator with the users, right? Experiment with things. Okay. Right. So this is super important slide. Right. So remember, user experience design is user centered. What is mean by user centered? We think in terms of user's point of view. We want to get the user's requirements, understand, and also develop what the users expect or the best for the user. Not developing what we like, like, or what we want, but what the user want, what the user like. Of course, we can try, advise them, but ultimately we need to develop what the user want. That is what is called user-centered. Okay, keep the user's needs at the center of all. Okay, user-centered design. Understand the context, big context, understand the user's requirements, then come up with some solutions, evaluate them, and develop the best. Okay. So if you do user-centered designing, there's a higher chance of success. Users will like your product. They will accept. So these are some design principles: visibility, feedback, constraints, consistency, affordance. Okay. So these are super important for exam. Okay. So what is mean by visibility? The things must be prominently available, right? You don't hide important things like buttons. So user must be able to quickly identify, okay, this is how I can do it. Visibility. Give feedback, whether it's success, fail, otherwise user confused. Add some constraints so that user will not be able to do invalid things. Make sure it's very consistent, color themes and so on. And if a button is left side, always keep left side. Don't take it to the right side in another screen. Affordance means use metaphors and so on so that users are very familiar. User feel like doing that. That is why we use buttons, icons, and so on. Okay. So there is a trade, there are trade-offs because we can't achieve all these things. Okay. Consistency is very important. Consistent look and feel, consistent color themes. Right? So the number one in user-centered designing is understand users, understand user needs, right? At broad level, understand the different type of users, variations, their expectations. Okay. Cultural differences, cognitive differences, gender, and so on. Gauge, and also think about users' privacy, security, and so on. Okay. Business needs, gender differences, age differences. So those are the understanding the users, right? Their capabilities when it comes to older people, younger people, middle-aged people, and also think about the technological diversity. What kind of, through which kind of device are they going to use it? Especially when it comes to mobile applications, because mobile phones comes in different sizes. Okay. And other social aspects, especially if your system is related to something that people use in social level, like social media and so on. And also think about their cultural differences, right? And so on. If it is a global application, right? Sometimes your application is used by people with different cultures, and they use it for intercommunication also, like WhatsApp, Facebook. So then it's more critical. You don't bias or you don't offense cultures. Okay? Multicultural interactions and accommodate human diversity. People are different, and also there are differently able people, like visually impaired people, right, and so on. So try to help them, try to afford them. Let include them. That is called inclusive design. Include them also as your users by providing those usability features. Okay. Accommodating human diversity. So people with color blindness, people with who can't hear, who has mobility restrictions, right? Auditory disabilities, sometimes cognitive disabilities, so lack of cognition, cognitive capabilities, right? Motor disabilities, that means they have mobility issues. So those are important. For example, if it is something like a ATM machine, maybe this determine where do you keep it. Can some person with uh, wheelchair reach your ATM machine? Okay. So environment is also sort of a part of UI, right? Cognitive disabilities and so on. Okay. Right. So that is topic one. It's a huge topic. So now let's move to topic two. So basically, the early topics are big, latter topics are easy, small. Right? Conceptual interactions. Okay. In interaction designing. Right. So this is super important for your exam. Double diamond framework for getting user involved or user centered designing. So it's like a two diamonds. Discover and define requirements and develop and deliver your product and make sure you get user interactions throughout. So use interactions and refine it, right? Refine your requirements, refine your design or the product. So therefore, these are cycles. These are cycles. And both cycle, you interact with users. That is why it's a cycle. You get feedback and maybe you want to refine your requirements. Here you get feedback and refine your design. So remember, we talk about the user interfaces, right? That is called double diamond framework. Discover, define, develop, deliver. හරියට නම් හතර මතක තියාගන්න. Okay. So how do you get the users involved in design? Make sure you communicate with all stakeholders. Make sure you get feedback by showing them your design artifacts and so on. Prototyping is another way of getting the user involved. Understand their requirements. Okay? Understand their requirements. Right? So very important that you involve users, talk to them, get their ideas, show your understanding to them, show your design to them. Right? Proof of concept is where you double check. Like your design, you don't develop straight away. You create a prototype. Your prototype is proof of concept. Okay? And also check the feasibility. Okay? Model your UI, okay, before developing conceptual models. So first you build your conceptual model. Remember there are two things, mental models, conceptual models. Mental models are users' point of view of the interaction. Conceptual models are developers first build the conceptual model and then develop it, prototype and develop it. Okay, conceptual model. So then use of interface metaphors. Metaphors are something familiar to us, like cut, scissor. So those that is a metaphor. Save, discard sign in metaphors. We can use metaphors to make it more familiar for the users. Okay. Right. So this is super important for past your exams. What are the interaction types? I think almost every year they have asked this. The four types are instructing, conversing, manipulating, exploring, and finally responding. The fifth one. If they ask five, otherwise these are the four. Okay. This is another new addition. So you must be able to explain each five. Instructing. So you give instructions step by step, and we get things done like doing payment, making an order. Those are more instructing type. You types, select from drop downs, radio button, submit, and so on. Right. So conversing is where you have sort of a dialogue with the system. These are new things like talk to your chat GPT, okay, and so on. Talk to Cortana, talk to Gemini, conversation, conversing. So then manipulating is more for gaming, virtual reality, augmented reality type things. Manipulating. And also with smartphones, we can use manipulating. So manipulating. Exploring is you explore things again, virtual reality, augmented reality. That is where you explore things. You go to a room, rotate, look at it from different view. So responding is where sort of a application take control. Application try to control, dictate the user, like some pop-up messages and ask you to confirm. Right? Sometimes it is intimidating, but sometimes marketing wise, people do these kind of things. System initiate request for the user to respond. Okay. Right. So that is topic number two. And final part is very important. what are the types of interactions? Right. So then cognitive, social, emotional aspects in these designs. Remember, cognitive means how people understand things, learn things, right? Learn things. There's a cognitive theory how people learn. So why cognition is important for the UI designer? Because user must be able to learn how to use it. Because some people they don't use computers software because they can't learn it. Because not everyone is smart, educated, especially older generation. Sometimes they can't even use a very simple application. Maybe they can use WhatsApp, but if it is booking taxi from say pick me, they can't do. Right? That means it is too complicated because their cognition level is less. Okay. So we need to think about that kind of people when we design things. That is why we design things very simple way, that kind of applications. If it is internal application, yes. So we have the staff members, qualified members using, but what about general public? Right. So cognition is you acquire, store, manipulate, retrieve information. So every system users must understand, learn, and then they can use it over and over. So therefore, when we design things, we must know how people quickly learn things, understand things, remember things. So these are the two type of cognition, right? Experiential cognition, that is we learn by experience. Reflexive cognition, that is without that you sort of conceptually understand things. Okay, like designing things and so on. You learn things as concepts, right? So these are some constraints: attention, perception, memory, learning, reading, problem solving, reasoning, right? So you can go through those things by yourself, but just try to understand what is perception. You need to remember things, short-term memory, long-term memory. What make it easier to remember, what make it difficult to remember, right? What make it easier to learn, what make it difficult to learn. So what is mean by incidental learning, what is mean by intentional learning? That is without intention you learn spontaneously. This is you intentionally learn like a subject. So basic things we learn incidental, but academic things and so on we learn intentionally. Right. So different type of thinking, different type of reasoning. So these are the major parts of cognitive framework. What are those? Mental models, gulf of execution and evaluation, information processing, distributed cognition, external cognition, interaction. Super important for exams. Especially mental models, gulf of execution and evaluation, distributed cognition, they have already asked this in the past papers. So therefore, in the future, they will be more concentrating on these as well. Because these last 3 years they have asked. Right. What is my mental model? Mental model is how a particular user remember, understand particular device or functionality. So we have mental model about uh, remote control. We have mental model about uh, mobile phone interface. If your UI is different from that mental model, they will find it difficult to use it. Of course, you can do certain changes, but not big changes because users get confused because it conflicts with their mental model. So therefore, when you do user experience design, first understand the user's mental model. What is the current mental model of majority of the users? And try to as much as comply with their mental model. If you want to do changes, do only small, small changes, not big changes, because users get confused. Okay? And of course, their mental model will change over time. So you will also need to change your UI accordingly, because mental model is by looking at different things. And big players, influential players like Apple, like Samsung, they influence the mental model because majority of users are using those. I mean, the mobile phone. I just took as a mobile phone, right? For example, when you design a new user interface for operating system, you must know that most of the users have only used Windows, Apple, Mac. So try to use those features as much as possible until you get the market share. Once you get the market share, you can influence the mental model. Okay. And these are some help for the users, especially when things are not according to the mental model, right? Clear and easy to follow instructions, online help, affordance, transparency, and so on. So you need to bridge the gap between mental model and conceptual model. Remember, mental model is a user's point of view. Conceptual model is your new design's abstract view. So try to make them close and closer together, close and closer together. So your conceptual model is complying with the user's mental model or majority of the user's mental model. But if it is not 100% tally, try to help them. Like tours at the beginning, like product tour, good help system. Okay. And so that is why I say too much innovation is not good. That is, you conflict with users' mental model too much. Maybe bit, but not too much. Right. So then this is super important. Gulf of execution, gulf of evaluation. So gulf means gap. Gulf of execution means there's a gap between what the users expect to do and what the physical system provide you to do. So physical system provide you something and user want to do something or this. The objective is the same, but if there's a gap, that is a gulf of execution. So we try to minimize. So we try to provide that the way user expects. That heavily depends on user's mental model. So then what is gulf of evaluation? So when the user does it, user expects some feedback, output. So that is user's expected output, maybe a message or something. Then what is the ex, real output of the system? So if the real output and expected output are tally, the gulf of evaluation is less. So we try to minimize that gulf of evaluation. So our output, our response is exactly what the users expect for that kind of a situation. So then user is very comfortable. So what we provide is what the user is trying to do, expect to do, and the result what we provide is what user expect. So that means gulf of execution is less, gulf of evaluation is less. Okay. Right. So another one is information processing. Okay. So how does our mind process information? How does our human mind process information? So then make sure your application do not conflict with that. So what is our mind's way of information processing? We take inputs or hear something, see something, encode it, comparison, then response selection, response execution, and output. So this what we received, we understand it, and then we decide the response and respond it. Okay. Right. So distributed cognition. So they have already asked this. So distributed cognition is rather than individuals when we look at the big picture, when people interact with each other and external things, how they understand things. Okay. How they behave and how they understand things. That is called distributed. Okay. Interactions among people, artifacts, environment. So how they in general interact with environment, others. So understanding that is called distributed cognition. Okay. So then the external cognition. Okay. So that is how people interact with external things or external representations. Okay. Like virtual reality, multimedia, graphical images, how they understand these external things. That is called external cognition. Okay. And people tend to externalize things like taking notes and so on. So they externalize because then they don't need to remember all of these because they know that I have noted it. That is also part of external cognition, like referring to documentation. That is called externalizing reducing your memory load. So rather than user depends on his or her memory, user knows from where I can get that information. Like where is the help, where is the user manual, because maybe he or she use it only once in a while. So computational offloading means you offload it to a computing device, like calculator for processing, the contact details or the address book in the phone, you offloading it memory, this offloading your processing power. Right? Another concept is annotating, explanation or modification of external representations, adding some additional representations. Okay. So cognitive tracing means basically you trace your cognition process, the manipulative process. Right? Another one is embodied interactions. So that is, we have the new wave of technologies like wearable technologies, haptic technologies, tangible user interfaces. So interacting with those new interfaces, we call it embodied because those are sort of become part of the body, like wearable technologies, okay, tangible interfaces. Right? You wear it and interact with it. Right? Social interactions, remember some applications we use socially, like Twitter, Facebook. Right? Another one is remote conversation. Sometimes we use UI for remote conversations like chatting, virtual communications. Conversation, co-presence, and social engagement. So this is what the Meta is also trying to do. Facebook, co-presence. So you try to like augmented reality. You try to present in that virtual environment. Like we are in a meeting, but at the same time it looks like we must feel like we are in a we have sit around a table. Right now that feeling is not there, right? But you must get that feeling also virtually, augmented man. So then the meeting is pretty much like in a room, in a room. right? Emotional interactions. Sometimes we can better interact with people with some emotional things like because happy, sad, serious, confused. We need to show our emotions. If we can show our emotions through UI, that is good, especially with chatting, social media usage. That is where we use emojis and other icons. Okay. So if we can make our interfaces expressive, emotional, sometimes it's good, not for business applications like banking applications, but there are like chat applications and so on. Right. Effective computing means we give some emotional aspect to the UI or systems, right? Especially using AI or emotional AI. But those are more research areas, okay? And also we try to understand others' emotions. Of course, that is more than UI. It's basically AI technology, okay? Right. Persuasive technologies. So that is, we try to get the attention of the users, especially for marketing and so on. Pop-ups, messages, reminders, prompts, and so on. Personalized messages, right? So now we move to the fourth topic. Now we have the smaller topics. Right. What are the interfaces available in user experience designing? This is the easiest topic. Okay. So command line, graphical user interface. You must know what are the pros and cons of CLI. Then what are the pros and cons of GUI? So these are some examples of GUI. Vim, Windows, icons, menu pointer interface. Okay. Pointer. So menus. What are the different type of menus? Pull down menu, drop down menu, fold down menu. You must know exactly what are those. Pop-up menu, pie menu. Okay. Cascading menu, that is one sub menu, and when you click on that, another sub menu. Keyboard accelerators like Control S, scrolling menus, walk-in menus, hierarchical menus, right? New type of Vim called ribbons. For example, office packages are like using heavily using Vims, sorry, ribbons because it's very compact. It gives more versatile view rather than just menus. Right? Buttons, toolbars, dialog boxes, semantics, right? So you specify the color in that color. You specify the font name in that font type, font. Okay? Right. Use of multimedia, virtual reality, augmented reality, mobile interfaces, web interfaces. Those are different type of user interfaces. Now we have the voice user interfaces, pen-based devices are there. For example, graphic tablets, writing pads, touch interfaces like smartphones, gesture-based interfaces. Without touching, we can use gestures and cameras and sensors will identify our gestures. Haptic interfaces where we touch it, like gaming pads and so on. And some multimodal interfaces where we have multiple ways of communicating. And shareable and tangible interfaces. Okay. Wearable interfaces and some robots, drones, those are new concepts. Okay. And this is very important, brain computer interfaces. Your brain directly interact with the user interface. Your brain. When you think, other device must understand, right? When we think, okay, I want to submit, the things must be submitted. So that is where you need brain computer interfaces with AI technologies. Actually, there's a company headed by Elon Musk called Neurospace or something. So that is the research on that, developing special chips and external devices for your brain to communicate with systems. Okay. And natural use interfaces means we try use natural ways of communicating with the system, like talk to it and so on. Okay, right. So next, data gathering techniques. So these are also important, right? What are the data gathering techniques? Uh, so why we data gather is part of the requirement and gathering requirements. Okay? So the requirement can be written as user stories, and there are different type of requirements, right? Functional requirement, non-functional requirement, data related, environment related, right? So when you gather data, part of the requirement gathering, so make sure it's sufficient, accurate, relevant. And we can use things like interviews, questionnaires, observations. Okay? So these are the issues in data gathering. Maybe issues in goal setting, issues in not correctly identifying the participants, okay? Not having a good relationship for getting the data, triangulation, pilot studies. Anyway, these are the good things. Okay. So make sure you have a clear goal. Why do you gather data? Then identify the participants from which people or sample of users we gather data. If you miss important people, you miss certain aspect of the requirements. Okay? So you can go for sampling. Okay, sampling. So you must know what are the different type of samples. Okay? Random sampling, you just randomly select people. So මේක වැඩි අහන්න ගොඩක් ඉඩ තියෙනවා. Random sampling, systematic sampling, right? Maybe you select users from regular intervals. Uh, Stratified sampling, we divide the population into categories, and from each category select random so that both category we have a representation from all the categories. We don't bias towards a category, right? Cluster sampling, so divide them into subgroups, okay, and randomly select the entire subgroup. So, okay, random select the entire subgroup as your sample, but your subgroups must be very randomized. So then non-probability sampling, like convenience sampling, where you just select available people. Snowballing, you select one and ask that person to select another one and so on. Okay, like a chain. Purposive sampling means you use your expert judgment to decide this is my sample. But this can be highly biased. Okay. Then you must have good relationship between the data collector and the data provider. That is you and the person you talk to. Right? Sometimes we need to sign a consent form if you are collecting some sensitive details. So consent form give you the consent by the user that he or she is agree to provide the required details. That is not always required, but if your data gathered is sensitive, you need to get it signed by with the user. It's good for both parties. Right? Triangulation means you look at it in different aspects and try to verify each. Okay. Different sources, different times, different places, different people, different sampling techniques. So that make it better because you're not biased towards something, you are not erroneous towards something. One thing can එකක් අනිත් එකෙන් ෂේප් කරලා දෙනවා ඒතකොට. අරකින් වෙන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රශ්නේ. එක දිගට එකක් කරනවා වෙනකොට. Okay. We can do a pilot study before do the real sampling. Okay. And it's very important that you record your data. Okay. And so these are some data gathering techniques like interviews. So what is structured interview, semi-structured, unstructured? You can interview focus groups, special interest groups. You can send questionnaires if you want to get it from more than one people or a lot of people and their opinions and so on. You can go and observe things, and it can be passive observation or participant observer. Right? So passive observer means you don't involve, you just passively watch it. But participant means you observe while you also be acting like a customer, operator, and so on. Okay. So make sure when you plan out when you do observation, because sometimes it can be offensive. You must get the permission. You must sometimes inform that they will be observed. Okay. Right. Ethnography is go and see how things are done in real world, real time. So it's very important. Then you can better understand the current business process, right? Current bottlenecks, current issues, so that you can fix those things as part of your UI design, UX design. Right. So there are two type of observation: direct observation in control environment, but it's in a control environment, but you directly observe. Okay. That is not just go and observe because this is a control environment. Earlier, just you go and observe. Okay. Indirect observation means you don't go and observe them, rather using tools and so on. We try to get the patterns like web analytics and so on. Okay, interaction logs. We go and directly observe the users. But these log files and so on, we can observe in an indirect manner their behaviors. Right. And also you can engage with user probes, probe users. In detail, you gather their concerns and so on. Probe means a little bit serious, sequential communication. Okay. Design probes, technology probes, and so on. Okay. Contextual inquiries can be there. Brainstorming, that is, you get together and generate new ideas, clarify ideas, maybe with user and team members. Okay. So that is to especially generating ideas. So therefore, it must be very liberal, right? Not a hurry because ideas emerge when you have very good environment, good conversation. Okay. Right. And also personas and scenarios. Persona is a hypothetically we create a persona like Mr. Pereira, this much of age, this is education, qualifications, and this guy is going to use this system like in this kind of a scenario. On the way home, he want to transfer money to his son. That is a scenario for an ATM machine. Persona is maybe Mr. Pereira who is working in a government office. He's in mid 40s and so on. Right? Persona and scenarios. We can build our personas and then build some scenarios. Okay. Right. That is personas and scenarios. So then data analysis and interpretation. So we can analyze those data gathered, direct or indirect, so that we can get some valuable information out of that. Okay. So we can do both quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. So usually quantitative analysis is better, but there are situations quantitative analysis is not possible. So then you need to go for qualitative analysis. Okay. So quantitative analysis is numeric. Okay. So therefore we can tabulate them, we can put it into graphs and see the trends, compare. Okay. So qualitative data can also be converted into set of numbers, but those are not quantitative, but maybe we can put it into some sort of a numbers, okay, like ranking and so on. Right. So these are some qualitative analysis techniques like identifying themes, categorizing data, and analyzing critical incidents. Okay. And also you can identify this bit of themes and do themic analysis. So themes are basically patterns, right? How to categorize data, how to create an affinity diagram, and critical incident analysis. Analyze the incident in a critical level, very serious level. Okay. So maybe we can surface some requirements. And also we can use analytical frameworks. Okay. Conversation analysis, discourse analysis, content, interaction, grounded theory, system-based frameworks. මම මේ වෙලාව මෙතන කරන්නේ නම් උදාහරණ පුළුවන් ආ. අහන්න පුළුවන් ඔක්කොම. Body discourse analysis, content analysis, interaction analysis, grounded theory. Okay. Right. So then we moved on to another very important topic, designing prototypes and constructions. Designing prototype and constructing prototype. Okay. So this is very important for especially MCQs. Right. So remember prototyping can be done in both requirement analysis stage so that we can verify requirements and design and develop stage so that we can explore new ideas, get feedback. Right. So you know what is prototype is. It's a not real product, but representation of your final product. It's a working model. Why prototype? Requirement with clarification and explore your design and get feedback on your alternative designs. So there are low fidelity prototypes which are far away from the reality, like paper sketches and so on. High fidelity prototypes which are more closer to the real product. Both are useful. Both are useful, especially low fidelity at initial stages. High fidelity when we are more serious, more refined. Okay. Right. So these are some low fidelity prototyping techniques. Make exam එක අහලා තියෙනවා. Okay. What are those low fidelity techniques? Storyboards. You just draw it like storyboard story. Maybe you can use hand sketches, or you can use some wireframe tools. Storyboarding. Okay. So then card-based prototypes. We can use some index cards to represent our UI and so on, or prototype our UI. Low fidelity. Okay. Low fidelity. Then high fidelity prototyping includes, of course, those are mostly tool based. Okay, because those are closer to the final product. So this is very important. Advantages, disadvantages, when to use low fidelity, when to use high fidelity. Then the two type of prototyping, evolutionary prototyping and throwaway prototyping. So throwaway prototyping, we do it for a purpose and then prototype is throw it away. But evolutionary prototyping, your prototype is gradually evolved to be your final UI or product in some cases. It's more serious. Okay. So prototyping can be done using some tools. Okay. Because you need rapid UI development there. Okay. Right. So then the conceptual designing. So the design must be first done at conceptual level and then realize into your final product. Okay. So remember, conceptual model is different from users mindset. Okay. That is called what? ඒකට කිව්වේ මොකද්ද? This conceptual model. කලින් එකට කිව්වේ users mental model. Right. Mental model, conceptual model. Conceptual model is designer's model that he or she is going to develop. Okay. Like your design basically. Conceptual model. Right. So this is another very important slide or set of slides. What is mean by participatory design? So when, that means when we design, we participate users for their feedback, reviews, and so on. And especially when they are participated, we can do more prototyping because otherwise we waste their time. Right. Right. So this is another මේක නම් අහලා තියෙනවා මම හිතන හැම අවුරුද්දෙම ඔය. Right. Five stage design thinking. Five stage design thinking. කෙලිම ලියන්න කියලා තියෙනවානේ. Emphasize, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. It's non-linear, right? From you can go backward and so on. So empathize, research on users' needs. Define, you clearly define the user's needs now because you have already researched, analyzed. Then ideate means challenge assumptions and create ideas. Now create new ideas to solve this problem. So prototype means maybe you want to build those solutions at prototype level so that you can get feedback and select the best. And then test your solutions or set of solutions or selected solution. Right, now we are in the final topic, evaluating designs. This is super important. I think this is the most important for your exam, second paper. Right. How do you evaluate your design? Right, evaluate your design. We are in this stage now. Okay. Right. Why evaluate? Because when we evaluate, only we can measure things. We can see whether it's going to work or not, whether users are happy or not. And also we can evaluate whether our X solution or Y solution is the better one. So then we can develop the better one. Okay. Right. Where to evaluate? Super important in this exam. So what are the three places? Lab environment, in a natural settings, remote studies. Examiner Haradi. Second paper. So lab environment, in a natural setting, remote studies. So lab environment means in a room environment where you give your UI and ask users to come and play around with the lab environment. Control. We can control that environment also. Okay. Natural setting means the users use it in a natural place. Say if it is ATM machine, now user try to use our new user interface in a that kind of banking environment. So remote studies means You study their usages remotely, maybe using VPNs, screen sharing, and so on. Sometimes that is good enough. And also, what is meant by formative evaluation and summative evaluation? So, formative evaluations are evaluation conducted during designing. Summative evaluations are the evaluations of your final product, release products. මෙන්න මේක ඉන්දියට තියෙනවා exam එකේ. හරි අහලා නැහැ වැඩි. Formative, summative. And usability testing is super important, right? So that is sort of the final sort of a testing where you test the usability of your system, user friendliness of your system or UI. Right. So these are another very important slide. What are the type of evaluations or what are the settings, control settings, natural settings, okay, or any settings not direct involving users, okay. So control settings means user activities can be controlled. Natural settings means we just test in their natural environment where we don't have any control. Or without users, we try to test it. Maybe our testers try to mimic them, try to understand how they will behave and try to do the same and so on. Okay. And also we can use inspections, heuristic walkthroughs, models, analytics as part of that. Conceptually testing. Right. So what is mean by evaluating in control settings? So we can control what the user do and we test that aspects. Natural settings, we test in their natural environment. We have no control. At unobtrusive, natural setting. Right. Crowdsourcing can also be used for evaluate that we give it to the users and get feedback from users. Crowdsourcing. Evaluating without users means that is very important for exam. We hypothetically test it using our imaginations and our experience. Okay. So again, we can use our heuristic knowledge and also we can collect those data remotely and model, predict, and so on. Okay. So heuristic evaluation means we, as UX designers, we know what are the possible things that can go wrong, that can go good, well, their expectations. So we test those heuristics. Okay. Heuristics that we think important. Okay. So these are some heuristics. Some heuristics. So in general, we expect as good user interface designs, visibility, match between system and real world, user control and freedom, consistency, error prevention, recognition rather than recall, flexibility and efficiency of the use, aesthetic and minimalistic design, help users recognize, diagnose, and discover errors, help and documentation, okay, and so on. Right. Another thing we can do is cognitive walkthroughs. Okay. So cognitive walkthrough means we simulate how users go with the problem solving. How are they going to do it? How are they going to use this system? How are they going to use this scenario? Cognitive walkthrough. Okay. Then touristic walkthroughs means users, developers, and we all together walk through the product or the UI or the usage scenarios. Okay. It's very interactive way of doing a walkthrough because users are also involved. Right? A/B testing, very famous question. So when we want to compare two alternatives, we can do A/B testing. First, we compare, we give users the two alternatives and get their feedback and decide which one is better or which one has drawbacks in which areas. Okay. And web analytics means very passive way without reaching the users. We use users usage patterns and so on using our tracking tools. Right. A/B testing I explained. Right. So we'll take a break. After the break, we'll do the 2023 second paper and backwards. Okay. Okay. So let's continue. So let's first do the 2023 paper. Uh, so you have two questions. Define user-centered design and now in second paper, obviously some questions are easy, some questions are difficult, right? Otherwise, of course, everyone will be getting A's and B's and everyone will get pass it, right? So therefore, you can expect. So your task is from easy questions, get the maximum, right? Get the maximum. And difficult question, try at least if you are not very sure what is the exact answer, try to write some general answer and try to collect some marks. And in MCQs, try to score most of that. Okay. Of course, in MCQs, if multiple answers are correct, paper is very difficult. If only single answer, paper is much easier. Right. So therefore, take both seriously. Right. So this is easy question, right? Straight question. Define what user-centered design is. User-centered design is keep user in the center in designing. So that means we take all our decisions with you end user in mind. So that is why we involve users, right? Gather requirements from users, verify things from users, right? Because basically we design what users really need, not what developers like or developers need. So likewise, you need to explain. Okay? Right? Focus on the users, their needs and need phases. Ensure that the final product is usable and meets the user needs and try to improve the user satisfaction, usability, and so on. Okay. Right. So this kind of question, try to get the full marks. Okay. Right. B. Name and briefly describe three usability evaluation methods that do not involve direct user interactions. Right. Direct user interactions. That means we evaluate, not users evaluate the system. So that is directly from your note. Right? Heuristic, cognitive, right? I think that was in last topic, right? Evaluation. I told you last one is very important. I think here, right? You can see these are the. So this is evaluate using the users with the help of users like uh, natural settings, control settings, or any settings that users are not directly involved. So control settings like lab environment, natural settings that is involving users. Okay. Crowdsourcing is also involving users. So this is without user. So that is what your question is. Right. So that means we test on behalf of the users with the understanding about what the user's expectations are. Right. Heuristics, analytical or A/B testing, predictive modeling. So those are the possible answers. Heuristics, that means we have some guidelines. Right. We have some understanding about the user's expectations, right? And we use those understanding expectation to and see whether those expectations are met. That is called test by heuristics. Okay. So these are some guidelines, right? We can use any heuristics. Okay, so these are some heuristics: consistency, visibility. So then we can do walkthroughs. Okay. So again, you don't need users because that is what the question is. Without users. And some walkthroughs may involve users, but this is walkthroughs without users. We, as designers, testers, walk through our user interface or our product and see whether it's usable. Okay. So another one is cognitive walkthrough. That is again without users, simulating how users go about problem solving. So this is we walk through it, but with problem solving mindset. So that kind of user interfaces. These are all possible answers. Okay. Even pluristic walkthroughs. But here in pluristic walkthrough is not an answer because users, developers, right? We get together and do it. But therefore, don't use pluristic walkthrough as your answer. Right? Right. So what are the answers? Heuristic evaluation, cognitive walkthroughs, predictive modeling, right? You can see pluristic walkthroughs is not the answer because their users are also involved. Explain how A/B testing can be used to evaluate two different, right? A/B testing is all about comparing two things. That is why we call it A and B. We compare A and B and see what are the pros and cons, what are the strengths for A, what are the strengths for B, what are the weaknesses of A. So we have something to compare. Maybe those two are our two designs or our design and maybe already available product from our competitors. Okay. Explain how A/B testing can be used to evaluate two different designs, that is our own designs of an e-commerce website. Describe the steps involved conducting A/B test. Right? So these are straight from your note. මෙහෙමම කිව්වත් නේද? Define the objective of our A/B testing. Create the variations. Of course, you need the A and B version because these are all our designs. Split traffic means we use some users use A, some users use B, or users use both. Then collect data, their feedbacks, and analyze the results and decide what is the best and implement the best. Steps ටික මෙහෙමම නොතුනත් ඉතින් ඔයාලට දෙන්න ඕනේ මේ දෙක ඩිසයින් දෙකම ඩෙවලොප් කරනවා නැත්නම් ප්‍රොටෝටයිප් දෙයක් හදනවා. හරි. දෙකටම අපි reasonable amount of users ලා allocate කරනවා නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලොන්ට එකම user දෙනවා. ඒ data collect කරනවා, feedback ගන්නවා, how they feel, right? Their feedback, and then we compare, analyze, and decide which one, and then develop it. List four advantages of high fidelity prototype. High fidelity means closer to the reality. Those are not just paper and pencils, sketches or storyboards, index cards. No, these are high fidelity using tools. We have developed the prototype. Still, it's a prototype, but it's more realistic, closer to the reality. Okay, closer to the reality. Right. So, what are the advantages? Obviously, it is more realistic. So, therefore, feedbacks are also more reliable. Okay, reliable. So, therefore, these we can get more better confidence, build better confidence with the users because these are we are getting feedback from more realistic product, realistic prototype. Okay, right, realistic. So the most important word is realistic because closer to the reality. Right? And also we can go for detailed testing because these are like the end product. Users can even interact. Like stakeholder buying means stakeholders, we can convince the stakeholders much better because this is more closer to the final product. Clear specification, clearer because this is more closer to the realistic, really end product. Right. Next question. Describe the key differences between usability testing in controlled laboratory settings and natural settings. So in natural settings, our product is test in normal environment. In normal environment, if it is a point of sale systems, we test it in a say supermarket. Okay. Supermarket, the real cashiers in a real queue, they use this. In control laboratory, it is not the real natural environment. So we ask some users to come to our places or in office environment, we ask them to test it. Thinking that if we take the same example, thinking that they are down now preparing a bill. Okay. So those are the differences. They just are the differences. Okay. So these laboratory testing settings. And they have given even advantages, though examiner has not asked you to write advantages, they have even given, right? We can observe the users in control environment, advantages, laboratory settings. We can vary certain things, but in observing using their natural environment, we don't have that kind of a control. But we get more realistic results because this is the real environment. And this is not for experimenting. This is where you can do experimenting. Even we can test some hypothetical situations. Right. B. Identify and explain four types of interaction design principles. Right. Interaction design principles like affordance, visibility. මතක නේද මේ පළවෙනිම එකේද කොහෙද තියුනේ? Right. Visibility, feedback, consistency, affordance. දැන් ඒවා ඇඟේ තියෙන්න ඕන. Right. Good UI design principles. විසිබිලිටි හැංගිලා තියෙන්න බෑ අපිට මොකක්ද ෆන්ක්ෂනලිටි එකක් ඕන වුණාම ඒක ටක් ගාලා තියෙන තැන පේන්න ඕන අපිට විශේෂයෙන් නිතර පාවිච්චි කරන හොඳට පේන්න ඕන නැත්තම් ගිහලා හොයන්න ඕන රට වටේ කොහොමද මේක කරන්නේ කියලා feedback. So when you do something you must give feedback. Is it success, not success? නේද සමහරවිට ඔයගොල්ලන් කිව්ව UCSC එකට කරනවා නේ එක එක සබ්මිෂන් නේද මුකුත් feedback දෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒගොල්ලොම කිව්වට ඒගොල්ලොම දෙන්නේ නැහැ ඊට පස්සේ ස්ටුඩන්ට්ලා ෂුවර් නෑ දැන් මේ පේමන්ට් එක අප්‍රූව්ඩ්ද නැද්ද මට එක්සෑම් එකට යන්න පුළුවන්ද නැද්ද කියලා හොයාගන්න බෑ සමහරවිට. පේමන්ට් එක ගිහිල්ලාද රෙජිස්ට්‍රේෂන් එක කන්ෆර්ම්ඩ්. So that means they don't give the UI doesn't give you the feedback. Right consistency. ඉතින් ඒවා තේරෙනවනේ affordance අපිට නිකන් කරන්න හිතෙන්න ඕන නේද? හිතෙන්න නම් metaphors වගේ ඒවා use කරන්න ඕන. Colors නේද? green දැක්කම අපි දන්නවා positive. red දැක්කම negative. බටන් එකක් දැක්කම දැන් අපිට ක්ලික් කරන්න වෙන්නේ. Affordance. Right. C part. Assuming you are a UX consultant, choose the most appropriate evaluation method for each of the following scenarios and justify your choice. So they have given you three scenarios and you need to tell which evaluation method, again from your final topic. Right? Which evaluation method like heuristics, A-B test, right? Or user involved test like control environment, laboratory or natural settings, right? Anything that now, any evaluation method. Right. First one, evaluating the effectiveness of a navigation system in a new mobile app. These are open questions as long as your question answer is good, correct, or reasonable, and you give reasonable justification, you should get the marks. Right? Evaluating the effective. Now, this doesn't say that whether the user involved or not, right? No. But and also read all three and try to because most of the time the same answer may not be everywhere, right? So just all three, read all three first. Effectiveness of navigation system of a new mobile app. Investigating the root cause of the user difficulties in completing the online transaction on a banking's website. Assessing the overall user satisfaction of new e-learning platform. Okay. Overall user satisfaction වගේ යන users ලව involve කරලා තමයි ගන්න වෙන්නේ ගොඩක් වෙලාවට. Because overall user satisfaction. Okay. So maybe here we can go for uh, use the real world users and get their feedbacks because overall user satisfactions. So what about the investigation, the root cause of user difficulties in completing online transaction on a banking website? So they want to find the root cause of difficulties. So difficult means, it's something to do with the cognition, right? Difficult කියන්නේ තේරුම් ගන්න බෑ. කරගන්න බැරුව දැන් හිර වෙනවා. කරගන්න බැරුව හිර වෙනවා කියන්නේ මේක තේරුම් ගන්න බැරුව. හිර වෙන්නේ අපි එහෙම නේද? ලේසි දෙයක් නම් එහෙම වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So this is something to do with the cognition. So this is effectiveness of a new navigation system. So this is a very open thing. මේකට ඉතින් ගොඩක් ඒවා use කරන්න පුළුවන්. ගොඩක් දේවල් use කරන්න පුළුවන්. Maybe we can use the real users or we can use heuristics because we know what are the good features of a navigation system. Right? Navigation system හදන පළවෙනි කට්ටිය අපි නෙමෙයිනේ. කියන්නේ menu systems. එතකොට අපි දන්නවා menu systems වල තියෙනවා හොඳ features මොනවාද. So maybe heuristics or we can give it to the users and test it also. Okay? Because the question doesn't restrict you from with use or without use. So these are open questions, okay? ලකුණු 24ම දීලා තියෙන එකට. Right. First one, examiner has taken heuristic. හැබැයි වෙන එකක් වුණත් හරියට justify කරලා ලකුණු දෙයි. Root cause analysis එකක් හන්ද මේක cognitive because finding the difficulties. So overall use satisfaction. So ඒකල කියලා තියෙන use surveys කියලා ඉතින් හරියට users ඒක නම් note එකේ තියුණා නෑ බෑ use surveys කියලා නේද තියුණාද? Surveys. note එකේ නෑ එහෙම වෙනම කතන්දරයක් නෑ හොඳේ. හරි. examiner අරන් තියෙන surveys කියලා අපි ඒක users ලා involve කරගෙන කරා කියන ලකුණු දෙයි. Okay. Right, that's it. That's it about 2023. It's not impossible, and also this paper is not that bad also, right? Fairly good paper. Examiner නිකන් examiner නිකන් අනවශ්‍ය ප්‍රශ්න අහන්නෙත් නෑ හරි. සාමාන්‍ය අපි දැනගෙන ඉන්න ඕන දේවල් තමයි අහන්නේ. සමහරව අහනවා නිකන් මහා විකාර ප්‍රශ්නත් මම මේ පේපර් එක ගන්න එහෙම නෑ. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් හොඳ questions ටිකක් තියෙනවා. අමාරු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. උන්තර මෝඩ අමාරු නෙමෙයි ඒක. හරි සමහර එන අස්වල් මුල් වල අහන ලොයෙත් නැති ඒවා නේ. එහෙමත් නෑ. වැදගත් දේවල් තමයි අහලා තියෙන්නේ. Right. So let's look at the second 2022 paper. Again, two questions, 6 pages, 1 hour. Right. Question number 1. List 5 stages of design thinking. Process in node. Matakane design thinking. Realization. It was the idealization and the idea generation. It was a prototyping, evaluation. I think 5 stages. Sorry, not realization. Empathize. Empathize means identify the requirements. Then define. Clearly define the requirements. This sort of analyze and define, ideate, generate ideas to how to solve this, prototype, and test. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. Make a nitara ahana question. Nitara ahana question. MCQ rat ahana. So that should be the answer then. Right. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. Because list කරන්න ගම explain කරන්න ඕනේ නෑ. List. List කියන්නේ නිකන් ලියන්න. Right. B part. User research is conducted with or without artifacts. Name 3 user research methods for each of the above categories. User research. මේක නම් වාගේ note එකේ තියුණා කියලා මට මතකයක් නැහැ. Maybe your reference book. User research කොහොමද කරන්නේ? එහෙම මේක ඉතින් නොදැන ලියන්නත් බෑ. Okay? With or without artifacts. මට නම් මතක නැහැ එහෙම එකක් note එකේ තියුණා කියලා. එහෙම තියුණාද? Maybe evaluation. Research your user කියන එක යටතේ තියුණාද? කරන විදියක් නම් මට හිතෙන්නේ නෑ වගේ. සමහරට වගේ reference book එකේ මේක තියෙන්නේ නැති. ඒ හරි එහෙම question එකක් තියෙන පුළුවන් paper එකක. හරි ඉතින් කරන්න දෙයක් නෑ. And what is the examiner's answers? Lab studies, ethnography, හරි user research කරන විදිහ නේද? lab එකකට ගෙනල්ලා user research කරන්න පුළුවන්. Ethnography, we can go and observe their their way of doing. Field studies, participated design, usability benchmarking, moderated remote usability studies. හරි මේක note එකේ තියුන්නේ නැහැ මට මතක විදිහට. හැබැයි ගොඩක් උත්තර දීලා දිනවා මොකක් හරි වලිය උපුත් අහුවෙන විදිහට. නේද? even AB testing වගේවත් දීලා තියෙනවා නේ. Intercept surveys, true intent studies, UX studies කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ general answer දුන්න අයට ලකුණු දීලා තියෙනවා. UX studies වගේ දුන්න අයට. හරි. කස්ටමර් ෆීඩ්බැක් වගේවත් අරන් තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයා මොනවා හරි ලිව්වනම් ගොඩක් අයට ඔය ලකුණු 6න් 6ම නැත්නම් 4ක් 5ක් යනවා. Because this is not directly from your note, examiner has given a lot of very broad answers. Okay. C මේ කැලේ අර කලින් ටිකම රිපීට් කරලා තියෙනවා උඩ ලයින් දෙක ඒකයි මම රතු කරලා තියෙන්නේ. Right. Assume that as a newly recruited UX engineer, you are tasked to compare 2 features of a mobile application and evaluate design flaws. State the most appropriate evaluation method for this task and explain how you would design the evaluation tasks. මම මේක උත්තරේ කලින් බැලුවා. හරි ඒක හන්ද මට මතකයි. But anyway, this answer is not. This answer is debatable actually because it says 2 features, right? Compare 2 features of a mobile application. මම හිතුවේ compare කරන්න ඕන features දෙකක් කියලා of the same application. නමුත් ඇත්තටම examiner assume කරලා තියෙන්නේ You want to compare those two features with another application. ඒක හරියට ලියලා නැහැ question එකේ. Compare two features of දැන් මෙතන two features කියන්නේ features දෙක compare කරනවා නෙමෙයි මං හිතන්නේ. මන් දන්නේ එහෙම නැත්නම් two features of two applications or same feature of two applications. අන්න ඒ වගේ දෙයක් තමයි ඔයාලගේ ඔළුවේ තිබිලා තියෙන්නේ අතටම. හරි? Because the answer is A/B test. A/B test කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ features of මෙතන two features කියනට වඩා features of two mobile application තමයි වෙන්න ඕන හරිය. Two mobile application. So then yes, A/B. But if it is compare two features of application, A/B test is not going to work, right? Because application mobile application එක application එකක් තියෙද්දි A/B test කරන්න බෑ. මම හිතන්නේ මෙතන question එක ලියද්දි මේ 2 කියන එක එහාට මෙහාට පැනලා. So I suppose the question, maybe the question that the examiner was thinking was compare features of a two mobile applications. So then yes, A/B test we can do because the answer is A/B test. Okay, A/B test. Okay. Or how can we compare feature A and maybe the same application? There are two features. Maybe you want to check which feature is more, maybe those features are alternative features. එහෙම කියත් නැහැ හැබැයි question එකේ. So then which feature maybe users like most, which features users think that more useful? Maybe that kind of question. Okay. මොකද compare කරන්න කියලා තියෙනවා තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ AB test වලට ගිහිලා තියෙන්නේ. But the question is little bit fussy. Okay. Right. D. List four low fidelity prototyping techniques. ඔන්න නිකම්ම ගන්න පුළුවන් ලකුණු හතරක්. ඒක වැඩි දීලා නැත්තේ ඒකයි. Low fidelity testing. Low fidelity කියන්නේ not close to the reality, right? Far away from reality. Right? We can draw some paper sketches, pen and paper sketches. Okay. We can go for something like storyboards, story cards, right? And any mock-ups. Okay, any mock-ups. Don't write things like wireframes and so on. Okay. Wireframe තරම් තියෙනවානේ. Low fidelity වලට අරන් තියෙන wireframe. ඒ කියන්නේ wireframe පවා අරන් තියෙන low fidelity කියලා. But better answers are storyboarding, paper and pen prototypes, card sorting, mock-ups, wireframes තරම් තියෙනවා. හරි wireframe එකෙත් active නෑ නේද? wireframe එකකින් තන්දිනවනේ අපි. හරි මම හිතනවා wireframe is also okay. Yeah, wireframe එකෙන් අපි අඳිනවනේ. tool එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා අපි නිකන් drag and drop කරලා දානවා. ඒක interactive නෑ. Yes, so therefore wireframing is also low fidelity. Right, next question. Briefly explain the difference between cognitive walkthrough and pluralistic walkthrough. So straight from the final topic, right? Evaluation. So cognitive walkthrough is walkthrough. That means we walk through our user experience with our new design, right? Maybe our testing team or with most of these are testing team, but we think look, we do the walkthrough as a problem solving step, learning session. How the user is going to learn this fast, how the user is going to use this for problem solving. So with that mindset, we do the walkthrough. Otherwise, it's a general walkthrough, right? Then what is touristic walkthrough? Remember, it's a broader thing. Developers, users, and some experts maybe get together and do the walkthrough. Okay, and get their opinions and so on, feedback and so on. So pluralistic. Pluralistic means more holistic and also involving different type of people. So cognitive process, cognitive walkthrough. And you can see the main differences are the approaches and participants. So here, cognitive process users and conducted usability experts and evaluators. On the other hand, the pluralistic walkthrough involves diverse group of stakeholders and aims to gather bench uh, broader range of perspectives to identify usability issues. Okay. More people are used in pluralistic walkthroughs. Cognitive walkthrough, only specific people involved, and they do it with problem solving or understanding, understanding, ease of familiarizing, that kind of mindset. Okay. This is to get more overall feedback. Look at it in different points of views. Okay. Right. So B part is නිකම්ම ලකුණු ටිකක් දීලා තියෙනවා වගේ අටක්ම type of interactions. Right. Conversation. Right. Instructing, manipulating, මතක නේද? Manipulating, exploring like augmented reality. Right. Instructing, that is the typical way where we do money transfer, create a use account. Instructing. Conversing like ChatGPT, Apple Siri, manipulating like computer games and so on. Exploring like reality, augmented reality applications, and responding, that is pop-ups, alerts වගේ දේවල් වලට is more system try to control the users activities. Okay. Responding. So app pass whether the user want to visit, this is an example. Okay. Favorite snack bar, blah blah. So the user need to just passively respond to that. Responding. Right. C part. The following techniques are commonly used for evaluating user interfaces. Evaluating. මම evaluating කියන topic එකට exam එකට පට්ට ආසයි. paper එකේ second paper එකෙන් භාගයක් විතර දෙන්නේ ඒකේ. මම දැන් පහුගිය අවුරුදු වල හරි මේ පාර මොනවද දන්නේ නැහැ. And systems in human computer interactions used to evaluating user interfaces and systems in human computer interfaces. Right? Techniques for evaluation. Cognitive walkthrough, direct observation, focus groups, online survey, heuristic evaluation. ඔන්න කරන්න පුළුවන් විදි ටිකක් දීලා තියෙනවා. Assuming you are the HCI consultant, human computer interaction consultant, choose one most appropriate evaluation method for each of the following scenarios from the list above. Justify your answer. So for these four scenarios, you need to identify which one you prefer, which approach you prefer. So those are good questions in a way, if it is not fussy, because you can't, now you don't need to memorize, right? Only thing is you must have a very good idea about what is cognitive walkthrough, what is direct observation, what is giving it to the focus groups, maybe special interest group එකකට අපි දීලා කියන මේක ඔයගොල්ලෝ use කරලා බලන්න. Like online survey, if you want to gather feedback from lot of people, different point of views, different opinions. And heuristic evaluation means based on best practices and so on, we evaluate on behalf of the end users. Right, first one. Evaluate the navigations and menus on hotel bookings website. මතකද කලින් paper එකේ තියෙන navigations එයා කලින් paper එකේ උත්තරේ දෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? Heuristic, because navigations and menus are well known things. We know what are the best practices in what are the different type of menus, what are the different type of navigations. You know, ekama question එක ආයෙ කරකවලා අහති. So the answer must be heuristics. And you need to explain, right? Justify. And this is a usability interaction method mainly used to identify any navigation issues associated. And you can see these are well-defined things. We know the different navigation techniques, and we can just test against our heuristics, best practices, expected behaviors. Okay. And second one, troubleshooting of a computerized control system for a fire brigade service after critical failure during a major emergency. This is nothing to do with the UI. Make a UI question anyway, yeah. Because troubleshooting of a computerized control system. Control system troubleshoot. Make a UI question anyway. අපෙන් අහන්න මොකද මේ ඕන තැනක දාන්න පුළුවන් user interaction see, right? So this is so troubleshooting is cognitive process. ඔළුව මහන්සි කරලා කරන්න ඕන වැඩක් මේක. දැන් isolate කරලා හොයා ගන්නවා නේ, isolate කරලා ගන්නවා. So therefore answer is මේ දීලා තියෙන අනිත් ඒවා කොහොමද හරියන්නේ නැහැ නේද? online survey කරන්න බෑනේ මේකට, focus group එකකට දීලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ගිහලා observe කරලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. මේක මේ ඒගොල්ලෝ දැන් මේව කරගන්න විදිය. කොහොමද මේක solve කරගන්නේ? Right? So it's more cognitive. ඔයගොල්ලෝ කොහොමද මේක troubleshoot කරන විදිය? cognitive එකේදී අපිට පුළුවන් ඒගොල්ලන්ට කියන්න කරන වැඩේ කටින් කියන්න කියලා. Right. Third one. Evaluation of the effectiveness of help system in a municipal council online assessment tax payment system. Municipal council එකේ online tax payment කරන system එක. එතකොට tax pay කරන්නේ කොහොමද? online නා මිනිස්සු. රටේ municipal council එකේ මිනිස්සු තමයි online කියලා දැන් tax pay කරන්නේ. Large number of user base, thousands. හරි. ඒතකොට ඒගොල්ලන්ගෙන් තමයි evaluation එක ගන්න ඕන දැන්. මොකද මේක tax payment online tax payment system එක. මේක internal system එකක් නෙමෙයි. නේද? online. ඒතකොට මේ මිනිස්සුන්ගෙන් කොහොමද ගන්නෙ? මොකද අපි tax payers ලා ගිහිල්ලා හම්බ වෙලා ගන්නත් බෑනේ. So best thing is give them a questionnaire and ask them to fill it on their experience on using the system. එහෙම නැත්නම් tax payment එකක් කරාට පස්සේ අපි අහනවා එයාගෙන් ඔයා කැමතිද මේ survey එකට යන්න? ඔයාගේ experience එක ගැන. So then we can collect. Still it is survey. Online survey. මොකද වෙනද තියෙනවනේ online survey කියලා. මේවට focus group නෑනේ tax ගෙවද්දි. heuristic use කරන්නත් බෑ. direct observation එකට යන්නත් බෑ. tax payers tax ගෙවනලාට අපිට කියලා බලන් ඉන්න බෑ. right. මේ cognitive walkthrough එකට යන්න දෙයක් නෑ මේක. එච්චරම නේද මේක. මේ trouble shooting කරන දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. question දෙක තුනක් කරනකොට අවුලුවට එනවා මේක. හරි. right. online survey. මොකද මේගොල්ලෝ pay කර මේගොල්ලෝ use කරන්නේ online. දහස් ගණනක් ඉන්නවනේ users ලා. Right. That's it. Okay. That's it. Right. So you can see this paper is not bad actually. Very high standard paper. Though it looks intimidating at first. එකපාරට නිකන් බය වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් subject එක තේරුම් අරන් නම් ඉන්නේ. examiner නිකන් ඔයාව බොරුවට අමාරුවේ දාන්න හදනව නෙමෙයි මේ. හරි? examiner අහන්නේ ඇත්තටම වැදගත් කතන්දර අහන්නේ. දැන් අර වගේ question කටපාඩම් කරලා කරන්නත් බෑ. නේද? ඒ වෙලේ ඔයා කල්පනා කරන්න ඕනේ මේ ඔළුවේ තියෙන කෙනෙක්ට පුළුවන් ළඟින් යන උත්තරයක් හරි හොයාගන්න. දැන් සමහර තැන්වල examiner සමහරට උත්තර ගොඩාක් දීලා තියෙන්නේ. නේද? Examiner is very realist, right? He the examiner knows what he is doing. Right? සමහර papers යනවා විකාර ප්‍රශ්නත් අහනවා නේ. මේ paper එක එහෙම නැහැ. Right. So let's move on to the 2021. අපිට MCQ කරන්න වෙලා මදි වුණොත් ඉතින් MCQ ඉතින් ඔයගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ ඉතින් MCQ වල මට වැඩි ලොකුට සාකච්ඡා කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. answers තියෙනවනේ. අපි second papers ඉවර කරමු. Right, 2021, paper 2. Understanding the human-computer interactions and user experience design, HCI and UX, evolved over the years, which lead to different paradigms in HCI. අන්න මේක තමයි ටික අසාධාරණ විදිහට ප්‍රශ්න අහලා තියෙනවා කියලා. Column may represent different questions. UX practitioner explores in each paradigm. Write the name of the paradigm against each of the question in column B. ඔයාලට ලියන්න වෙනවා අතන paradigm A ද paradigm B ද paradigm C ද. Paradigm A is more related to the users. Right? Users. Understanding the user. Right? So paradigm 1. Right? Paradigm 2, it's more related to cognitivism, information processing, aspect of the interaction. This is more human aspect as a low level thing. The third one is more holistic approach. Right? ඒක තමයි phenomenological situated කියලා. Like interactions and so on. Okay. දැන් මේක ටික අමාරු question එක. අමාරු කියන්නේ fuzzy. So paradigm 3, complexity of interactions, social aspects, and so on. Okay. පුළුවන් විදිහට කරමු ඉතින්. අමාරු question එක ටිකක් කරමු. උත්තර ටිකත් එක්ක මේක පේනවා නේ. කරමු දැන් නෑ පේනවාට දැන්. ඔයාලට තියෙන මේ ටික fill කරන්නද? සමහර වෙලාවට මම දැන් හරියටම user අත හිතා ගන්න බෑ. user ඔක්කොටම ලකුණු දෙන්නේ නැති මේකට නා. paradigm කියලා නැති 1 2 කියලා නෑ. How can we fix problems that arise in interactions? So it's for me it is little bit cognitive problem solving. හැබැයි examiner අරන් තින්නේ paradigm 1. ඔන්නෝවා තමයි upset එක. මොකද මේ question හරි open. Right. What existing situated activities in the world should we support? What existing situated activities in the world should we support? දැන් මේකත් අපිට එකපාරට නම් මට නම් හිතා ගන්න බෑ එකපාරට කොයි එකද දාන්න කියලා. It's more user specific or users cognitive process or holistic thing. Holistic thing. So examiner has taken it as it's more related to holistic interactions, complexity, social, logical aspect. Okay. මට මොන වගේ අවස්ථාවල වලදී use කරන්නේ කොහොමද? ඉතින් ගොඩක් broad නේ. සමහරට ඒකම තමයි ගන්න. How can we support interaction without constraining too strongly by what can computers do or understand? මේකත් එකපාරට කියන්න බෑ. How can we support interaction without constraining too strongly by what can computers do or understand? මට පේන examiner එකක් දාගන්න වෙන්නේ දැන් නිකම් paradigm කියලා දාලා. What මේක user කෙනාට වඩා computers ගැන කියන්නේ නැහැ. user කෙනෙක් කියවන අපිට paradigm 1 කියලාවත් ගන්න. Okay. How can we improve the efficiency of computer use? So examiner has taken as paradigm 2 මට ඒක එකපාරට කියන්න බෑ අතටම හරි. බොරු කියන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. මොකද මේ හරි ෆාසි නේද එකපාරට එහෙම කියන්න බෑ මට නම්. So that is why I told you this is a very unfair question. Okay. What are the values at the site of interaction and how can we support those in designs? What are the values at the site of interactions and how can we support those in design? So examiner has taken this as more holistic, complicated, social aspect. How can we accurately model what people do? what people do. Examiner has taken this as again paradigm two, more cognitive related thing. Anyway, that is sort of a very, very fuzzy question, right? As question number one. Okay. Right. සමහරට මේක වෙන එක්සැමිනර් කෙනෙක් හැදුවා වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. හරි මේ පේපර් එක. පස්සේ අනිත් එක්සැමිනර් මාරුණාද දන්නේ නැහැ. බලමු අනිත් question උත් එහෙම පස්සේද කියලා. Explain the difference between user experience design and user interface design. So that is straightforward question. So user experience design is subset of user experience. User interface design is a subset of user experience design. So UXD is the holistic approach of understanding users, designing, evaluation. But user interface design is focusing on what is the best user interface for that requirement. Okay. So when you do UID, you need that understanding about UXD. Okay. So UI focus on screens, pages, visual elements, whereas UX is more experience. It's more holistic experience of your interaction with your UI. And next one. And that is very easy, right? Mental model, conceptual models are used in user experience design to improve the understanding of the product being developed. Briefly describe the difference between these two. Remember, mental model is how the users, a particular user, it depends because different users can have different mental models of a same system. Because with his or her experience, the mental model is a user's mental picture of a product, how to use a product, and its use interactions, like a mental model of a TV remote control, mental model of a microwave oven use interface. So we have bit of experience, right? ඒ experience එකෙන් අපිට පොඩි mental model එකක් තියෙනවා. අපි පාවිච්චි කරපු නැති microwave oven එකක් වුණත් අපිට ඒ mental model එකෙන් සෑහෙන දුරට operate කරගන්න පුළුවන්. Of course, if it is complied with the mental model of the people, it's designed. So then conceptual model is when designers design user interfaces, the designers abstract view of the user interfaces. That is a conceptual model. So a good conceptual model resembles mental model of the majority of the users. Okay. Likewise, you need to explain. So users mental model, designers conceptual model. Right. There are different type of interactions when a person can interact with product. List 3 such interaction types. අන්න වට්ටෝරු question එකක්. නිකම්ම ගන්න පුළුවන් list කරන්න කියලා තියෙන්නේ explain කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. හරි conversational, right? Instructing, conversing, manipulating, exploring. Okay. වට්ටෝරු question එක. Read the following scenario and identify if this is a gulf of execution or gulf of evaluation. So what is gulf of execution? The way end user expect to do something and the way the system provide that functionality, if those are different, there's a gulf of execution. I expect to do it in one way, but the system provide the interactions or the UI in a different way. That means gulf of execution. Gulf of evaluation, when I do something, success or failure, I expect certain way of reporting the result, and the way exactly the system give you the result or feedback, that difference is gulf of evaluation. Good systems make sure that the gulf of execution and gulf of evaluation is minimal. Right. So this is the example scenario. User who downloaded a new mobile application notice that its method of notification is clearly different to that of other applications he used. Right? Method of notification. Notify करने that is more related to gulf of evaluation. The screen indicates that he has received a notification, but it does not guide him to on how to get the access to the notification. So that is bit of gulf of execution. So this part is gulf of evaluation. This part is gulf of execution. මොකද එයාට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ මේකෙන් දැන් කොහොමද notification එක බලන්න කියලා. අනිත් පැත්තේ notification එක එන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා හොයාගන්නත් බැහැ ඔයාලට. So bit of both. Okay. මෙතන කියලා තියෙනවා gulf of execution විතරයි. ඉස්සරහා තියෙන gulf of execution තමයි. හැබැයි පිටිපස්සේ gulf of evaluation එකකුත් තියෙනවා නේ. නෑ මෙතන තියෙන gulf of evaluation ඇත්තටම හරි. method of notification කියලා තියෙනවා. සම notification කියන එක අපිට එන එක. response එකක්. හැබැයි මෙතන තියෙනවා gulf of execution. කොහොමද මේ notification එක බලන්නේ? මේ දෙකේම එකම උත්තරේ දීලා තියෙන්නේ හැබැයි යා. gulf of execution මේ එකම දාලා තියෙනවා. ආයි gulf of execution කියලා ආයි එකම ලියලා තියෙනවා. හරි එකම දේ තුන් පාරක් දාලා තියෙනවා ඒක කියලා මම දන්නේ නැහැ. හරි. හැබැයි උත්තරේ විදිහට examiner අරන් තියෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ කොටස බලලි වෙලා gulf of execution. Okay. right B ඔන්න අර වට්ටෝරු question එක මම කිව්වේ හැමදාම අහනවා කියලා non-linear iterative modern approach to involve users in designing five main stages. Explain the design thinking approach using a diagram. ඒක හැබැයි non-linear කියලා පෙන්නන්න ඕන. non-linear කියලා පෙන්නන්න. මොනවාද? empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. So you can go from one stage to the other, right? Prototype කළා ideate වලට එන්න පුළුවන්. Test කළා define වලට එන්න පුළුවන්. And so on. Right, C part 1. Evaluating products being developed is one of the most crucial stages in user-centered design. The main issue in UX engineer needs a main issue a UX engineer need to address is the place of evaluation. කොහෙද මේ evaluation එක කරන්නේ? The place of the evaluation is carried out. Where evaluation takes place depends on what is being evaluated. Write down 3 types of environments in which the user experience evaluation can be take place. Right. Control lab environment, right. Natural environment, මතකයිනේ? Natural environment, or we can test at remote location. So let the users evaluate or use it, and we just remotely evaluate. Maybe remote desktop connection, remote screen sharing. We can monitor how the user use it. Okay, 3 types. Assume that UX engineer and our task, assume that you are a UX engineer and our task, or that means you are tasked to conduct an evaluation for the following 3 user studies listed under column A of the following table. Write down the most appropriate type of environment to conduct the user experience evaluation. ආයිත් බලන්න ඕන දැන් මේක remotely කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? natural environment එකේද කරන්න ඕන? නැත්නම් control environment එක කරගන්න කරුවොත් වැඩි හොඳයිද? හරි. මොකද මේ වෙලාව user experience ගැන කතා කරන්නේ. එතකොට heuristic එක නම් මම දන්නේ නැහැ නේද? right. අර උත්තර ටික නම් පේනවා. right. A study to identify web accessibility of a web page for differently able users. මේ differently able users ලා තමයිගේ experience එක තමයි බලන්නේ. ඒකට තේරෙනවනේ මේ differently able users ලා කියන්නේ පොඩ්ඩක් සමාජයේ වෙනස් කොටසක්. ඒකට ඒගොල්ලන්ට අපිට කියන්න බෑනේ ගිහිල්ලා real environment එකේ මේක කරලා පෙන්නන්න කියලා. මේගොල්ලෝ සමහර ඇස් පේන්නේ නැති අය වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒගොල්ලෝ කොහොමද මේකත් එක්ක අපේ තියෙන features එක වැඩ කරන්නේ කියලා බලන්න. So therefore it must be either lab environment or remote. ඒගොල්ලෝ ගෙන්න ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් lab environment. සමහරට ගෙන්න ගන්න බැරි නම් even remote නේද? ඒ වගේ justify කරන්න ඕනේ වුණොත් එන්නේ. But the examiner has taken lab. A study to identify how long it takes for a child to get bored when playing a prototype mobile game. ඒ ගේම් එක කොච්චරලා සෙල්ලම් කරාමද එයාට එපා වෙන්නේ. සෙල්ලම් කිරීම නවත්ත ගන්න කියලා බලන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේ එකක් බලන්න හොඳම වැඩේ මොකද්ද? natural environment. නේද? එයා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ගේම් එක ප්ලේ කරන environment එකේ බලන්න ඕන විනාඩි කීයක් ගිහලාද එයාට එපා වෙන්නේ කියලා. So definitely natural environment. To study the online behavior of users when interacting with social network. ඒකට ඒගොල්ලෝගේ online behavior එක social network එකත් එක්ක interact කරද්දී තියෙන එක බලන්න ඕන. users ලානේ ගොඩක් ඉන්නවනේ මෙතන. ඒකට එක්ක කියන්න පුළුවන් අපිට natural environment කියලා. නමුත් මෙතන users ලාත් ගොඩක් ඉන්නහන්ද ඕන remote. මොකද අපිට ඕන users ලා වෙන analytics වගේ වලින් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ logins වලින් බලන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට යන්න ඕනේ නැහැ එතන. ඒගොල්ලෝ interact කරන අපි මෙහෙන් අපි දන්නවා ඒගොල්ලෝ මොන features ද use කරන්න කියලා analytics වලින්. ගොඩකට remote කියන analytics වලින් analyze කරන්නේ. Right, that's it. That's it. So we did 3 past papers, the second papers, okay? First papers මම කරන්න යන්නේ නැහැ මොකද මට කරන්න වෙලාවක් මදි වෙනවා මෙතන කරන්න තව පැය භාගයක් තියෙන්නේ. හරි. බලන්න ගිය අවුරුද්දේ නම් හැබැයි multiple answers possible. First paper එක ටිකක් tough. මොකද එක වගේ answers තියෙනවා. හරි. එක වගේ answers තියෙනවා. එක MCQ එකක් આવත් ඒකට ලේසි. හැබැයි නැත්තම් නැගිය අවුරුද්දේ මම එක answer එකයිද හරි. multiple answers තියෙනවා. හරි. multiple answers තියෙනවා. පරිස්සමෙන් කරන්න. හැබැයි it's not that difficult as well, right? හැබැයි එක answer එකක් වුණා නම් හරි ලේසි. හරි. එක answer එකක් වුණා නම් ලේසි. මොකද සමහරවිට ටිකක් fussy questions තියෙනවා. හරි. But mostly questions are within your syllabus, okay? Because you have the answers, right? You can do it by yourself, right? Right. So that's it. I just did a quick revision just to emphasize what are the important places. But anyway, for the first paper, entire thing is important, right? But second paper, the more focus is topic 1, then prototyping, evaluations, right? And also concepts like Gulf of execution, Gulf of evaluation, that kind of things, okay? But MCQs, pretty much the entire notes are covered, okay? Some questions are straightforward, some questions are a little bit fussy, especially because multiple answers are possible. Have a question, Hari? Straightforward. What type of data analysis involve identifying patterns or calculating values such as ratios, averages? Definitely quantitative, right? Not qualitative, themic, and so on, right? Which of the following best describe the qualitative data? Qualitative. ඉතින් මේ measure කරනවා නම් මනකම් වෙන්න බෑනේ. But words, images, yes. වගේ note එකේ තියෙන වචන එහෙම use කරලා. Always numerical නම් qualitative වෙන්න බෑනේ. Data collected through automated tools. ඒක නම් ටිකක් පස්සේ ඉතින් automated tools වලින් මොනවද ගත්තේ කියලා. Data that requires statistical software පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ අනිවාර්යෙන් quantitative වෙනවා. අන්න ඒක ටක් ගාලා best කිව්ව ගමන් බොහෝ විට එක උත්තරයයි. බොහෝ විට නෙමෙයි best කිව්වොත් එක උත්තරය. Okay. Right. So you should be able to go through the MCQs now. right? Again, go through the note, UCSC note again, and try to highlight the important points, right? Right, that's it. So that's it about your semester 4 classes. So do your best. Okay, right. We stop at this point, right? Thank you.